Silence is the ultimate weapon of power. Ever wonder why your silence makes them uncomfortable? Why your absence echoes louder than any message you ever sent? It's because silence, when done right, isn't empty. It's full of meaning. And when you stop texting, when you choose not to react, when you sit with your power instead of handing it away, you become unforgettable. My friends, this isn't about ghosting. This isn't about playing games. This is the no-text strategy that haunts them. And once you understand it through the lens of Stoic wisdom, you'll never chase, over-explain, or beg for closure again. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a lighthouse. You don't chase ships. You stand tall in silence. Still, steady, unshaken. The storm comes, the waves crash, ships may drift away, but your light doesn't flicker for anyone. That's the power of silence. And when you embrace the no-text strategy, you become that lighthouse. You stop chasing people who don't even deserve the sound of your notifications. You stop explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking just to be heard by someone who never deserved your volume in the first place. Let me break one of the biggest lies you've been fed, that if you care, you should always reach out. That being the bigger person means double texting, checking in, keeping the conversation alive. Nonsense. Stoicism teaches us the opposite. The strongest move is no move. You see, emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care so much about your peace that you're no longer willing to disturb it just to be noticed. They expected you to fold, to chase, to break character, but here you are, still, focused, silent, and powerful. You know what really haunts people? Not insults, not drama. It's when you go quiet, when you don't justify, when you don't beg, when you don't give them the luxury of your reaction. It's like turning off the music in the middle of a song. They feel the silence more than they ever heard the melody. And they start to wonder, why isn't he texting? Did I lose access? Has he moved on? That's when the strategy works. That's when the regret sets in. You don't have to remind them what they lost. Silence will do it for you. Folks, the truth is, people take your presence for granted when it's always available. It's human nature. We chase what pulls away. We value what's rare. And when your words become rare, when your digital presence becomes a mystery, you shift the energy. You no longer play by their rhythm. You become the one they think about at night, not because you were loud, but because you were silent at the right time. And here's the fun part. They'll try to bait you back. A random emoji, a vague, hey, some breadcrumb to see if they still own your attention. Don't bite. Let your silence speak. Because when you finally say nothing, you say everything. This strategy isn't cold. It's clarity. It's choosing your peace over their chaos. It's Stoicism in action. So remember this. You don't need closure. You don't need long explanations. What you need is discipline. Emotional discipline. The kind that makes people feel your presence even when you're gone. You don't chase, you attract, you don't react, you choose. That's what this is all about. Say it with me in the comments. I choose silence. Drop it now, claim it, own it. And if this stirred something in you, if you felt that shift deep in your gut, don't scroll away. Hit that like button, press subscribe, and stay with me, because this journey is only beginning. Stay calm, stay still, stay powerful. Number 1. Silence screams louder than words when it comes from someone who once cared. You were loud once, weren't you? You used to text with heart, with fire. You'd send the first message, the second, maybe even the third, hoping, begging, over-explaining, apologizing for things that weren't even your fault. You filled the void with words because the silence scared you. You feared that if you didn't keep the conversation going, it would die, and with it, so would your connection. But here's the hard truth, my friend. The moment you felt the need to prove your worth through texts, you already gave your power away. Imagine this. You're standing in a cold hallway, knocking on a door that used to open without hesitation. But now, silence. No response. So what do? You knock again, louder, still nothing. You start whispering through the door, explaining yourself, justifying, pleading. But deep down, you know the truth. That door isn't jammed, it's locked. By choice. And the more noise you make, the more you reveal your desperation. That's the trap many fall into. We fear silence because we associate it with rejection. But what if I told you that silence is the one thing that flips the power dynamic? That the moment you stop knocking, that's when they start listening. They'll start wondering, not because you shouted, but because you vanished. And now your silence echoes through the very halls they built to keep you out. Here's the lie they don't want you to realize. They're not as emotionally detached as they pretend to be. They want you to break, to reach out, to lose your cool. Because it gives them validation. It tells them they still control how you feel. That's why they bait you. That's why they go silent and watch if you'll chase. But the moment you don't respond, the moment you don't fall for the trap, that's when it starts to sting. Because now they're the ones who feel uncertain. It won't be easy. Let's not sugarcoat it. The first time you choose silence over reaction, it'll burn. Your ego will scream. Your fingers will hover over the keyboard. Your mind will create 100 imaginary outcomes. What if they forget about me? What if someone else takes my place? What if this silence ruins everything? But these fears, they're illusions, ghosts of an anxious mind. You're not ruining anything, you're reclaiming everything. Your time, your worth, your energy. You're not being cold, you're being clear. Stoicism teaches us this. Don't react to every emotion. Don't cling to what you cannot control. And don't offer your peace to people who wouldn't recognize its value. When you hold back the text, when you resist the urge to explain, you are not giving up. You are growing up. You're evolving past the need to be understood by those who never truly listened in the first place. You might ask, but what if they think I don't care? Good. Let them wonder. Let them sit with that silence. Because the truth is, they were never haunted by your messages. They were haunted by your absence. And now, they're forced to feel it. They're forced to confront the space you used to fill. They'll start playing back every word you said, every message you sent, trying to decode what went wrong. Not realizing that you didn't disappear, you just stopped explaining yourself to someone who refused to listen. Let me tell you something powerful. The person who holds their silence holds the frame. When you don't text, when you don't reach out, you take back control of the narrative. You stop being the chaser and become the choice. They no longer get to shape how the story ends, because now you've removed yourself from the script. That silence, that pause, that mystery, it lingers, it unsettles, it works. This is where the healing begins, not in closure, not in confrontation, but in the sacred space between you and your next move. You start to realize that what you thought was love was often just attachment. What you thought was connection was actually dependence, and what you thought was conversation was just you doing all the emotional labor. You rise not when you speak, but when you choose not to. That's real power. That's real clarity. So next time your heart pounds and your mind screams, text them, just once. Remember this. Every time you choose silence, you teach them a lesson they won't forget. You teach them that your attention is not a birthright, it's earned. That your love isn't loud anymore, it's wise. And that your presence, it was never ordinary, It was a gift they wasted. Say it with me, say it with your chest, drop it in the comments. I don't chase, I choose. Let the world hear you, let them feel you, let them wonder where that energy went, because they'll search for it, and they won't find it again. You've outgrown that version of yourself. Stay calm, stay silent, stay untouchable, and remember, this is just the beginning. Number 2, the quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Rumi. And when you stop texting, when you go completely quiet, not because you're punishing them, but because you're protecting yourself, you start to hear everything you were once too distracted to notice. Their actions, their patterns, your own peace. The silence you once feared becomes your sanctuary. Because silence, my friends, doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything finally is. Let's be honest. Most people are addicted to noise, addicted to constant communication, addicted to getting a reply, an emoji, a half-hearted LOL, because in their mind, even a bad response feels better than no response at all. But what they don't understand is that every time they hit send out of insecurity, they weaken their own frame, and every time you don't, you strengthen yours. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a room where music is constantly playing, loud, distracting, overwhelming. It's hard to think. It's hard to feel. But the moment you turn it off, even just for a second, the silence feels shocking, pure, exposing. Now you hear the floor creak, your own breath, the clock ticking. That's what your no text does to them. It strips away the noise they were hiding behind. It leaves them alone with their thoughts. And here's the truth they don't admit. Your silence exposes everything their ego tried to bury. You might think, but what if they just move on? Then let them, because anyone who moves on just because you didn't chase them was never yours to begin with. You're not staying silent to win them back. You're staying silent to win yourself back. This is where detachment becomes your greatest ally. In Stoicism, detachment isn't about apathy. It's about clarity. It's about saying, I release control over what I can't change, and I focus only on what I can. You can't force them to value you. You can't force them to reply. You can't even force them to care. But you can control the space you hold, and sometimes the strongest space you can take up is the one you stop filling, and it won't just be them who notices. You'll feel it too. That shift, that inner calm, that sudden drop in anxiety when you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. That sense of power when you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who never deserved an explanation. It's not arrogance, it's evolution. You've stopped feeding a connection that starved you, and in that stillness, you begin to rebuild the most important relationship of all, the one you have with yourself. Let me ask you something raw and honest. Why do you want to text them? What's the real reason? Because you miss them? Because you love them? Or because you're afraid that if you don't reach out, they'll forget you existed? You know what that's called. Scarcity mindset. The belief that if you don't remind people of your worth, they'll devalue you. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. What's meant for you won't require you to beg, and what's real won't dissolve just because you stayed silent. If anything, your silence becomes the proof of your self-respect. It tells the world, I don't barter my energy for breadcrumbs. You're not texting because you're healed. You're not chasing because you've chosen dignity. And the more you lean into that discomfort, the more magnetic you become. It's ironic, isn't it? The very moment you stop trying to prove your value is the moment people start to feel your absence, the moment they start asking themselves the questions they never asked before. Did I mess this up? Did I take them for granted? Why did they stop reaching out? Because silence, unlike noise, forces them to listen, and not to your words, to their own regret. This is where the haunting begins, not out of malice, but out of stillness. They expect noise, they expect closure, they expect the same old pattern to play out. But when you interrupt that pattern, when you say nothing, when you vanish not out of bitterness, but out of peace, they don't know what to do with that. And suddenly, you're not the one chasing the conversation. You are the conversation. They'll feel it in the quiet moments, in the spaces where your name used to appear, in the mirror when their ego doesn't get the hit it craves, in the digital silence that says more than 1,000 words ever could. And some of them, they'll test you, they'll breadcrumb, they'll send that weak, half-hearted hey, hoping to see if you still jump. Don't, because every time you break your silence without purpose, you train them to believe your boundaries are flexible, that your peace has a price, that your silence is just a tantrum, not a transformation. But every time you hold your silence, you raise your value. You show them and yourself that you don't speak just to fill space. You speak when there's meaning, when there's respect, when it's earned. This is where the power flips, not with revenge, not with insults, but with indifference. You're not hurt, you're healed, you're not bitter, you're better. And that shift, that quiet, steady shift, it turns you from a memory into a mystery, and people don't forget mysteries. So here's your moment of truth. You can send that text. You can chase that validation. You can break your silence to get a response you already know won't satisfy your soul. Or you can hold the line. You can take a breath. You can sit with the silence and realize it's not your enemy. It's your mirror. It's your strength. It's your armor. Drop it in the comments. I honor my silence. Let them see it. Let yourself see it. Because you're not being quiet for attention. You're being quiet for alignment. And the world will feel the difference. Stay silent. Stay certain. Stay untouchable. Number 3. When you are no longer reactive, you become unreachable to the chaos that once controlled you. There comes a moment in your growth where you realize your greatest power isn't in what you say, but in what you no longer need to explain. You stop fighting for clarity from people who live in confusion. You stop demanding respect from people addicted to disrespect. You stop overgiving, over-texting, over-justifying. That's when you begin to reclaim your silence, not as a weapon, but as a boundary. And that's when they feel it. Not just the absence of your words, but the weight of your restraint. Because let's be real, when you go quiet, it shakes them. Not because they cared as much as they pretended to, but because they were counting on your reaction to feed their comfort. They didn't need to value your words before, because you were always available. You were always explaining, always trying to make things right. But now, you've gone ghost, but not out of pettiness. You disappeared into your peace. And the thing about peace is, it's loud for those who are used to noise. You ever notice how some people only notice your presence once it's gone? Not because they loved you properly, but because you were useful, predictable, emotionally available at the snap of a notification. And the moment you stopped playing that role, the power dynamic shifted. Suddenly, they don't know who they're dealing with anymore. Because this version of you, the one who doesn't reply, who doesn't beg, who doesn't try to resurrect dead conversations, this version scares them. Why? Because it forces them to look inward, to feel the gap, to wonder, did I lose access or did they level up? And deep down, they know the truth. You didn't just walk away, you upgraded. From texting out of impulse to texting with purpose. From needing closure to being the closure. From being the one always available to being the one they have to earn. This isn't easy. Let's not pretend it is. The habit to reach out, to check in, to fix things with a text. It's strong, especially when your heart's involved, especially when you're emotionally wired to connect, to care, to resolve. But not every silence needs to be filled. Not every awkward pause is yours to fix. Sometimes the silence is the message. Sometimes it's the only thing that finally gets heard. You ever wonder why people fear being ignored more than being insulted? Because silence can't be argued with. There's no reply, no defense, no back and forth. It's just space. And space is powerful, because in that space they start hearing echoes of everything you didn't say, every boundary you never enforced, every time they mistook your kindness for weakness, every moment they thought you'd never leave. Now they sit with it, alone, unanswered, unacknowledged. You don't need to ghost people out of malice. You don't need to go silent with the intention to manipulate. That's not what this is about. The no-text strategy isn't a game. It's a shift, a decision to stop leaking energy into people who never deserved a drop. It's realizing that your peace is not a negotiation, that your presence is not to be treated like a convenience, and your attention, that's a privilege, not a guarantee. We live in a world where people confuse availability with weakness, where being open-hearted is seen as naive. But here's the truth. Real strength isn't cold, it's controlled, stoic, still. When you're calm in the chaos, when you don't respond to bait, when you sit quietly in your own lane and let people wonder what's going on in your head, that's when you become magnetic. Because you're no longer predictable, and predictability is what kills curiosity. They thought they knew you. They thought they could push your buttons and get a reaction. But now, you're not reacting. You're reflecting. You're unbothered. And unbothered people are dangerous to those who can't control them. Let's break another lie while we're at it. The one that says, if you don't reach out, you'll lose them. Read that again. If silence makes someone leave, they were never really with you to begin with. What you're losing isn't a person, it's an illusion. And what you gain in return is priceless: your emotional independence, your peace, your power. You don't owe everyone access to you just because they once had it. You don't owe them your words just because they're used to hearing from you. And you definitely don't owe them closure wrapped in paragraphs they'll never appreciate. They had their chance to hear you, to respect you, to reciprocate. Now, they can listen to the silence. It speaks fluent accountability. That's the beauty of this shift. It's not about them, it's about you. You're no longer texting from a place of fear. You're no longer explaining yourself just to feel seen. You're no longer begging for connection from people who only offered confusion. That version of you is gone, dead, reborn. And this new version, he chooses silence over chaos, detachment over desperation, self-worth over instant validation. And yes, it'll get quiet, lonely even, but not empty. Because in that silence, you'll finally meet yourself again. You'll hear your own thoughts without their noise. You'll realize how much space they were taking up in your mind, your chest, your daily energy. And when that clarity hits, when that peace settles in, you'll smile. Because you'll know you made the right call. You walked away from what was draining you. You shut the door they kept half open. You didn't slam it. You didn't scream. You just closed it with grace, with stillness, with power. So the next time your fingers itch to text, to explain, to reach out, pause, breathe. Remember who you are now, remember what you've learned, and remember that the version of you that texts for closure already knows the truth. They weren't meant to stay, but you were meant to rise. Say it with me in the comments. I text with power. Write it, mean it. Let it echo through the silence you've chosen, because that silence, it's not weakness, it's wisdom. And that wisdom, that's what haunts them the most. Number 4, you don't chase what you respect. and you don't beg for what you are. There comes a shift in every person's life when they realize they've been pouring into the wrong hands, sending messages that never deserved their energy, explaining feelings to people who never had the emotional depth to understand, checking their phone constantly for replies that were never going to offer real peace, only temporary distraction. But the real breakthrough happens not when they finally reply. It happens when you stop waiting, when you stop chasing, when you stop needing them to respond for you to feel whole. That's what giving space really is. It's not about strategy, it's not manipulation, it's liberation. It's saying, I no longer orbit your attention span. I no longer operate from emotional dependence. I'm not in the business of earning basic decency anymore. And when you truly understand that, you don't just stop texting. You stop giving them the luxury of your emotional labor. Think of it like this. Imagine standing in front of a vending machine. You've put your coins in. You've pressed the button. You're waiting for the snack to drop. But nothing happens, so you shake it. You press again. You try to trigger the sensor. Still nothing. At some point, you have to stop. Not because you didn't want what was inside, but because you realized the machine was broken, and it's not your job to keep shaking it. That's what happens when you stop texting first. When you give space, you finally accept, this person is not capable of delivering what I need, and I'm done shaking. People who are used to being chased will always be confused when you stop running. It's almost funny, isn't it? The way they pretend not to notice, but suddenly they're watching your stories, they're liking your old posts, they're popping up with that random "how have you been" message, not because they miss you, but because they miss control. They miss the feeling of being wanted. And when you remove that, when you stop chasing, they start to panic. Not because you were wrong, but because now they realize they were never in charge. You were just generous. And when that generosity stops, when the texts stop, when the effort fades, when you stop filling in all the emotional gaps, they're left with nothing but their own reflection. That's what haunts them. Not your anger, not your words, your absence, your peace, the fact that you didn't need to yell or explain to get your point across. You just stopped showing up. This is why Stoicism is powerful, because it teaches you that space isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's you stepping back, not because you're punishing someone, but because you're protecting yourself. It's recognizing that your peace matters more than being heard by someone who never really listened, that your presence should be earned, not expected. It's hard, though. Let's be honest. Giving space is painful at first. The silence is loud. Your mind fills the gap with doubts. What if they forget me? What if they move on? What if I'm making it worse? But those questions come from the wounded part of you, the part that still believes you need to do more to be loved. But here's the truth. If love has to be chased, it's not love, it's performance. And you are not a performer. Giving space isn't a risk, it's a filter. It reveals everything. Because someone who truly values you will feel that distance and move closer. Someone who's been using you will feel that distance and stay silent. And that silence, that's your answer. No need for closure, no need for confrontation, no need for one last text to make it clear. The space makes it loud enough. You see, when you give space, you stop negotiating your self-worth. You stop trying to manage someone else's emotional responsibility. You stop making excuses for their silence while breaking your own boundaries just to keep the connection alive. You stop feeding the fire that only ever burned you. And finally, you breathe. That space is your healing. That silence is your freedom. And the moment you realize that you don't need to chase, don't need to beg, don't need to remind anyone of your worth, that's when the power returns to you. Slowly at first, quietly, but it returns, and it builds, and it roots itself deep. Now you're no longer texting out of fear, you're moving from intention. You're no longer counting hours between replies. You're counting moments of peace. You're no longer trying to hold a connection together with nervous energy and fast replies. You're letting it unfold, and what's meant to stay will, what's not will fade. But here's where it gets powerful. You're okay either way. That's when they feel it. That shift, that self-possession, that strength. You're no longer the one waiting at the edge of their world. You're building your own. And suddenly, they're the one knocking. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to post subliminal stories. You don't have to prove anything. Your distance is the message. Your lack of access is the consequence. And it's more haunting than any paragraph you could have sent, because now they're wondering why you stopped caring, why the energy shifted, why the tap ran dry, and all they hear is silence. Let them hear it. Let them sit in it. Because you're not the same anymore. You've grown, you've outgrown, and this space you've created, it's not a void, it's a boundary, one they never thought you'd enforce. Say it with me in the comments. I protect my peace. Drop it, declare it, and don't look back, because space doesn't push people away. It reveals who was really willing to walk toward you. And from now on, you don't text to chase, you pause to choose. Stay grounded, stay calm, stay unshakable. Number 5. When you make someone work for your attention, they start treating it like the privilege it always was. Let's get something straight right now. Constantly giving your time, your energy, your words, and your attention to someone who hasn't earned it isn't generosity. It's self-abandonment. You're not being kind. You're being accessible, and there's a big difference, because in this world, what's easy to get is easy to forget. And if you're always there, always texting first, always replying fast, always giving more than they ever asked for, you start to become background noise. You start to fade into predictability, and nothing kills attraction faster than that. But the moment you pull back, the moment you make them work for your attention, that's when everything changes. People will act like they want honesty, closeness, depth, but what they really crave is the thrill of the unknown, that subtle mystery, that energy that makes them ask, what's he thinking? Why didn't he reply yet? What's going on in his world that doesn't revolve around me? That's not a mind game, that's human psychology, and it works because it flips the script. You're no longer the one proving your worth. You're no longer begging to be seen. You've become something rarer than a good morning text. You've become a challenge. That's what Stoicism teaches us at its core. Not just silence, but discipline. The discipline to pause before you give, to observe before you offer, to know your value so deeply that you don't need to be loud about it. Because here's the truth. They can feel it when you start making them work for your attention. They sense the shift. You're no longer handing your energy out like free samples. You're making them earn it. Imagine a priceless piece of art. It's not displayed in the front window. It's behind glass, guarded, protected. You don't just walk up and take a selfie with it. You walk through rooms. You pass barriers. You work to see it. Why? Because it has value. Because anything precious is never freely available. And now, that's how you carry your presence. Not arrogantly, but with quiet, grounded confidence. Because you finally understand what you bring to the table, and you're done serving it to people who don't even bother sitting down. You ever notice how the people who give the least often get the most attention? It's not fair, but it's real. And the reason is simple. They've trained others to value their energy, to see it as something that must be earned, not handed out. That's not cruelty, that's boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're filters to see who's willing to walk through the door right. Now, This won't sit well with people who are used to taking. They'll call you distant, cold, different, and they're right. You are different now because you've stopped over-explaining. You've stopped overreaching. You've stopped offering emotional luxuries to people who treat them like scraps. And yes, they'll feel the shift. They'll feel the weight of your restraint, because what used to be given freely now requires effort. But here's where it gets powerful. When they finally work for it, when they finally earn it, it means something. That's the difference. You're not punishing them. You're making every moment more meaningful. Every reply more valuable. Every message something they remember. Because it wasn't just another response. It was you, showing up when it mattered, not because you had to, but because you chose to. That's when curiosity kicks in. That's when they lean in, because now they're invested, they're intrigued, they're wondering what you're not saying, what you're thinking, what you'll reveal next. And suddenly, you're not the one entertaining the conversation. You've become the mystery inside the conversation. This isn't about manipulation. This is about emotional self-respect. You're not playing games. You're playing chess. Every move is intentional. Every pause is powerful. Every no text is a declaration of self-worth. And they'll either meet you there or they'll fall away. But either way, you win. Because the moment you stopped giving freely, you started getting real. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the one who always reaches out, especially if your identity was wrapped around being available, being kind, being dependable. But here's the truth. You're still all of those things. You're just not desperate anymore. And that difference, that line, that's where your peace begins. People respect what requires effort. Let them climb. Let them earn your time. Let them sit with the silence between messages and feel the weight of not having you on demand. Let them chase you for once, because you're no longer afraid of losing anyone. You're just done losing yourself in the process of trying to be enough for people who never deserved that version of you. And watch how the dynamic shifts. Watch how their tone changes. Watch how the same person who once left you on red starts crafting messages with care, because now they know it's not just about getting your attention, it's about keeping it, and keeping it means showing up with consistency, with respect, with presence. That's what you deserve, and nothing less. So the next time you feel the urge to reply instantly, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, have they earned this response? Is this me showing love, or me trying to not be forgotten? And if the answer is rooted in fear, hold the line, hold the silence. Because you're not texting for attention anymore, you're texting from alignment, and that kind of self-control, that kind of inner fire, it doesn't go unnoticed. Say it with me in the comments. I don't chase, I attract. Let the world see it. Let you see it. Because you are not background noise. You are the signal they never learned how to value until you made them work for it. Stay grounded. Stay disciplined. Stay undeniable. Number 6. You never lose power by being silent. You lose it by needing to be heard. When the dust settles and the conversation fades and the texts stop coming in, what's left? Your peace or your panic? Your control or your collapse? Because that's the true test. It's not about how you act when everything is flowing, when the messages are steady, when the energy feels mutual. It's about how you hold yourself when the silence stretches, when your phone doesn't light up, when your heart says, text them, but your soul whispers, don't. That's where your power is either built or broken. Staying grounded and focused during those moments is the final secret. And it's not a secret because it's hidden. It's a secret because very few have the strength to live it. You see, silence is easy when you don't care, but when you do, When your mind is replaying old conversations, when your chest tightens every time you see their name pop up but don't click it, when your fingers type and delete and type again. That's when silence becomes sacred. That's when staying grounded isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Because let's be real, every fiber of your being wants to respond. You want to explain, clarify, fix. You want to make sure they don't misunderstand the version of you they're creating in your absence. But here's the hard truth. If someone can't see your worth in your stillness, they were never really looking in the first place. Staying grounded doesn't mean you don't feel the pull. It means you choose not to let that pull dictate your next move. That's Stoicism in action. That's power through self-control. And it's exactly what turns ordinary men into immovable forces. Imagine a mountain. It doesn't send out invitations for people to climb it. It doesn't beg to be admired. It doesn't move just because someone calls its name. It stands. It waits. It lets those who are meant to reach the summit earn it. That's you now. You're not adjusting your height to make others more comfortable. You're standing tall and grounded. You're no longer in a rush to prove. You're no longer chasing peace in someone else's response. You've stopped trying to finish conversations that ended the moment you stopped begging to be understood. And now you're not just silent. You're anchored. The ones who don't understand this will call it pride, coldness, ego, but let them. Because they've never learned the strength it takes to stay still in the storm, to feel everything and react to nothing. They've never had to breathe through the ache of waiting for a reply that may never come, and deciding that your self-worth doesn't hang on a notification, and that's where your power multiplies. When you stop tying your mood to someone else's message, when you stop checking your phone like it holds your identity, when you start owning your silence like a crown, not a punishment, you become dangerous in the most beautiful way, because now you're not driven by impulse, you're not dictated by emotion, you're focused, clear, grounded, and in a world obsessed with noise and chaos and instant gratification, that kind of presence is rare. That kind of composure haunts people. It's magnetic. Not because you're trying to pull anyone in, but because stillness creates curiosity, and curiosity leads to reflection. And that reflection, that's when they start seeing the weight of your absence. But here's where it gets deeper. Staying grounded isn't just about them, it's about you. It's about choosing to no longer live your life at the mercy of someone else's inconsistencies. It's about creating a new standard within yourself that says, I don't move unless it's with intention. I don't speak unless it's with meaning. I don't react unless it aligns with my peace. You'll notice things changing when you do this. Your energy stops feeling drained. Your self-respect starts rebuilding. You stop rehearsing fake conversations in your head, trying to fix what was never your fault. You start thinking clearer, sleeping deeper, moving lighter, because you're no longer carrying the emotional weight of a connection built on your need to be heard. You realize you're not here to win arguments. You're here to win your freedom. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to know yourself so well that silence is no longer lonely, it's luxury. And sure, you'll miss them. You'll think about what you could say, but those thoughts pass, and what stays behind is something stronger. Discipline. Not the kind that forces you to act like a robot, but the kind that says, I am more than my reactions. I am not my impulses. I am not my fear of being forgotten. You don't text just to fill a gap. You don't respond just to feel something. You move from strength now, from calm, from wholeness. And the result? You're no longer just someone they used to text. You're someone they never figured out because they expected emotion, drama, explanation. But what they got was stillness, certainty, detachment. They got a version of you they couldn't control, a version they didn't expect. And that version, that's the one they'll remember. So the next time you feel the emotional wave rising, when silence starts to feel heavy and you want to break it just to feel some release, don't. Hold the line. Breathe. Tap back into that grounded version of yourself. Remind yourself you've already spoken, you've already shown who you are, and now you let your absence echo, because silence isn't passive. It's active. It speaks. It shifts things. It rearranges dynamics. It demands presence without noise. Say it with me in the comments. I move with intention. Not emotion, not desperation, not noise, intention. And if they don't know what to do with that version of you, good. That's how you know you've changed. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Stay rare. Number 7. The most powerful message you can ever send is silence. They won't admit it, but it's not your texts they remember. It's the ones you never sent. It's the messages they expected, the replies they were sure would come, and the dead silence that followed. That's what stays with them. That's what haunts them in the quiet moments. You see, anyone can write paragraphs. Anyone can beg, plead, explain. But when you stop speaking entirely, when you withhold the predictable reaction, you become unforgettable. Not because you were loud, but because you chose stillness when they expected noise. People don't forget that. They don't forget the person who once made them feel seen, heard, understood, who used to light up their notifications, and then one day didn't. They don't forget the moment your presence became rare. They try to play it cool, pretend it doesn't bother them, but that quiet, it echoes louder than any rant ever could. And the more they try to ignore it, the louder it gets. Because silence has weight. And when it comes from someone they didn't value until it was too late, it becomes a burden they carry long after the conversation ends. That's the beauty of holding your energy back. Not out of bitterness, but out of reverence for your peace. You've already said enough. You've already given enough. You've already explained what kind of love, presence and soul you bring to the table. Now, you're done repeating yourself. And when you make that shift, when your silence becomes the final chapter, they're left flipping through old messages, trying to piece together where it all went wrong. Trying to decode the version of you they once had easy access to, but never truly appreciated. They don't miss your words. They miss the comfort, the attention, the feeling of being wanted. But now that comfort has been cut off, the signal has gone quiet, and suddenly they're stuck with their own thoughts, with their own guilt, with the realization that you were never the problem. They just got too used to someone who loved them beyond what they were capable of returning. And now, you're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not cold, you're just gone. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You've left the room without slamming the door, without making a scene. And that's what hurts the most. Not the rage, not the goodbye, but the unannounced withdrawal of your energy. They expected a storm. You gave them silence. And in that silence, their ego starts to panic. Their mind starts playing tricks. Are they done for real? Have they moved on? Do they even care anymore? Because you didn't give them the drama they were ready to fight against. You gave them distance, peace, and there is nothing more unsettling than the peace of someone you thought you had control over. That's why silence is so potent. It doesn't just remove your presence, it exposes theirs. It reveals how little they contributed, how much they relied on you to carry the emotional weight, how convenient your consistency was, until it disappeared. You were the one who replied at 1 a.m., even when you were exhausted. You were the one who checked in, even when you weren't okay. You were the one who kept the conversations alive, even when they gave you nothing back. But those days, They're over. You don't perform for people who can't see the value in your presence. You've learned now that your attention is a gift, not a given. And if someone has to question whether you're still available, that's not cruelty. That's correction. That's the universe realigning your energy, reminding you that not everyone is meant to have unlimited access to you. Silence is the consequence of disrespect, the echo of self-respect. You're not punishing them. You're preserving you. And they'll feel that every time they unlock their phone and don't see your name. Every time they scroll through your messages and see the last one, unanswered. That little space between delivered and read, that's the ghost of who you used to be. The one they could always count on to respond. Gone. But let me be clear, this isn't about being cold for the sake of it. This is about reclaiming your value. You were once the open book, the warm voice, the soft heart, and they mistook that for weakness. They thought your kindness was desperation. They thought your loyalty was neediness. And now your silence is rewriting every false narrative they had about you. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not distant, you're discerning, you're not gone, you're focused. Focused on yourself, on your peace, on the kind of love that doesn't need to be chased or explained or defended. And when they realize it, when it finally hits them that they've lost something real, not through a fight, not through a dramatic exit, but through the quiet strength of your detachment, that's when they'll feel it in their bones. That's when the haunting begins, not because you cursed them, but because they did it to themselves. They didn't lose you, they lost access to you. And there's a difference. You didn't just disappear, you evolved. You didn't just stop texting, you started listening to yourself. And in that sacred silence, you found what they never offered: clarity, peace, and strength. So now, you don't chase, you don't explain, you don't repeat. You walk, you heal, you rise. And the ones who couldn't appreciate your presence, they get to live with your absence. Say it with me in the comments. My silence is strength. Not pettiness, not games, not punishment. Strength. Because sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. Stay still, stay silent, stay sovereign. In conclusion, remember this: silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you stop explaining and start evolving, your absence speaks louder than any message ever could. Let your stillness shake the ground they walk on. If this spoke to your soul, like, share, and subscribe for more truth that transforms.